Hi, and welcome to Philosophy Bites. Today, I'm going to be discussing Mill's harm principle in relation to the coronavirus. John Stuart Mill, the utilitarian philosopher, wrote an essay called On Liberty, and one of the key things that he discussed was the concept of the harm principle. The harm principle states that the government can only interfere with your liberty or freedom if you actually harm somebody else. When I was studying at Glasgow University, the lecturer used the example of in the 70s when they made it the law that you had to wear a seatbelt. And many people were actually quite upset, thinking, well, why should I be forced to do that? Surely that should be my own personal choice. Where it might become a possible issue, which is an unusual circumstance, is that if somebody nowadays, now we have seatbelts in the back as well. So let's say somebody in the back of the car doesn't wear their seatbelt, and then as a consequence there's a crash. They go flying forward and end up killing or injuring the person sitting in front of them. Unusual, but possible. So when we think of the difficulty applying the harm principle is things like, obviously, if you might think, well, does that mean you can just take any drugs that you want? Well, that depends, obviously, whether you could potentially harm somebody else when you take drugs, like if you have alcohol, people beating up the NHS staff. So there are some difficult cases with the harm principle, but you can see what Mill is getting at, this idea that really the government, if you're not harming anybody else, then you should not be allowed. If you're not harming anybody else, then you should be allowed to do what you like. Now, how do we apply this to the COVID situation? Well, it's things like, obviously the masks has caused a lot of controversy. Are you harming others by not wearing a mask? Unfortunately, there's no easy answer to this because the scientists dispute the effectiveness of the mask, so it depends upon your view of the contrasting scientific evidence. Many people do not feel, for example, that where children in secondary schools having to wear a mask between lessons when they'd have to take them off in the classroom doesn't really help at all. One-way systems that we have to follow, bizarre, does a COVID follow the one-way system? But we have to think about the opposite of Mill's harm principle is basically what we have at the minute, which is called paternalism, whereby the state almost acts like a parent that tells you what to do and dictates curbs on your freedoms. So, I hope you found this topic quite interesting, because I think Mill's harm principle is a very interesting concept as the basis of laws. And the question is the government being far too paternalistic in relation to the coronavirus? Thank you for watching. Goodbye.